here we go. We are here in the Potts home, their St. George home. Today is Tuesday, January 31st, the last day of January, 2023. Today, Daniel is how old?
Let's see, 68, soon to be 69.
68, almost 69. Okay, give us your full name.
Daniel Nicholas Potts.
What day were you born?
March 10th, 1954.
Okay, good. Who are your parents?
My parents are Olaf Nicholas Potts and Dorothy Ferris Potts.
And who are your siblings?
My siblings are Althea Ferris Potts and Richard Dean Potts.
Okay. All right. So the first thing we're going to start with are, I've just asked you to come up with some specific memories of aunts, uncles, like you didn't know any of your grandpas except a little bit of Frank Nicholas Potts.
Right. So with Frank, we used to go up there to where he lived in Woodland, Utah. And this was when he was in his older years. You know, he would have been, I think, late 70s when we would go up there. And looked very much like that obituary that you were, obituary picture that you were showing me. So he was older and, you know, not all that active at the times that we would go up there. But we'd go up there in the summer and the winter. During the winter time, they had an ice skating rink outside the house. It was really the neighbor that had it, but
like a pond?
It was like a pond that froze over, and we'd go skating on that pond. And during the summertime, we would sometimes stay overnight with them.
So how many times a year would you say you went?
Oh, 3 maybe times a year we would see them.
And they wouldn't, do you remember them coming to see you guys?
No, not really. I mean, at that point, they were older and they were just content to stay at home. And,
did they have a lot of land?
not a ton. I mean, they had a little bit of land that the house sat on. But, you know, when we'd go over in the wintertime, we'd you know, sometimes stay overnight, and we'd go upstairs. They had an upstairs to their house, and kind of had fun in that upstairs bedrooms that they had. And but Chloe, Frank's wife at that time, I kind of felt like she was kind of on the ornery side. It was probably just that she was older and suffering the effects of old age. But
how long were they married? Do you know?
I'm not certain. I'd have to look that up. I can look it up. But yeah, Richard had a much different view of Chloe because he stayed up there a whole summer.
Oh.
And when I interviewed Richard, he told me that she had a very nice disposition, you know.
Okay.
But to me, she was just kind of ornery a lot. But I was glad to hear that he had a lot different view than I did.
Is the house still there? Do you know?
I think they tore it down. I think it was torn down, but it had a really nice stove in it. Kept the whole house warm. They burned wood and coal in it. One thing I remember about my grandfather is he made me this slingshot out of deer antler, and I just really prized that.
Do you still have it?
I don't have it any longer, but in my younger years, that was just the coolest thing I could. Yeah. And I think my grandfather, Frank, knew that that would be cool for
You'd
a kid
like
my
that.
age, yeah.
Yeah.
And he had made it himself. He had carved
The
that.
antlers.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, and as I was telling you before we started this interview, I remember the funeral up there in Woodland when Frank died.
How old was he? Do you remember?
I think he was around 86
So
when he
that's
died.
why it is
87.
good long life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
he
Chloe
lived-
was still living?
Yeah, Chloe was still living when he passed away. And I remember the graveside service up there at the cemetery, and I actually discovered that a lot of my relatives were there,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah,
in
you
that
said
cemetery.
I would like to go see.
Yeah.
That would be cool. We lived in Park City right by there. We should have taken better advantage of that.
So
Was he born in Woodland too? Like, was that his?
no,
Okay.
he wouldn't have. I mean, they were all over the place. They moved all over the place. I don't think he was born in Woodland, but I think the family kind of ended up in that area.
Okay. I just remember something about someone being born in Woodland, but we can check. Anyway, any more with Frank, or do you have other
That's
relatives?
kind of my memories of Frank. He was older, and you know, we go up there and stay sometimes, and visit, but it wasn't a ton of interaction.
And your dad didn't know his dad till later in life.
Right.
So, but you feel like by that time they were pretty close.
Yes. My father was actually encouraged by Frank to look into the church, and it's really that encouragement that caused my father to become baptized.
Mm-hmm.
So he wasn't baptized until later in life, after the war and all that.
But because of his parents' divorce and he was raised mostly with his mother, he didn't really get to know his dad until after like high school.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Okay, any other relatives?
Well, I have Aunt Dena was probably my closest aunt. She was the coolest aunt.
She painted the picture behind him, which is
Right there.
massive.
And she painted that when she was in her late 80s.
Did you say that's a scene from Germany?
Yeah, that's a scene from Germany. It comes from a puzzle I purchased in Germany.
So she painted that after your mission?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, she painted that after my mission, and she was in her 80s and mostly blind when she painted that.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So, I mean, my aunt would basically bend over backwards to do anything you wanted. I mean, I asked her, just on a whim, I asked her, well, how about, this is when I was 16, how about selling me your car? And she thought about that, and, okay, I'll sell you my car. and at 16, I didn't really have a concept of what a car meant to someone, but she went out and she bought a new Volkswagen
Yeah,
bus.
that's
She
the
sold
memories
me
that her kids still remember that.
Yeah.
She's a VW girl.
Yeah.
Lady.
She's a VW. But the kids were actually kind of perturbed that she would sell her car to me instead of them, Why don't you sell it to us? So she kind of got into a bit of trouble for that, but she always made you feel very special. And when I asked her to paint this big picture, she's okay. I mean, this is the biggest thing she's ever painted, she's painted
Did you
smaller.
ask her to make it?
Yeah, I asked her to make it that size.
Wow. Yeah, that would just overwhelm me.
Yeah.
But that's awesome.
But we used to go up to Rupert, Idaho, where she lived in the summer, and we would spend time there with her. Mostly we would go to this place called Camp Easley, and it was a kind of resort, had a swimming pool. It wasn't anything real fancy, but it had a swimming pool that had ponds and rivers near it, and I would go fishing there. One memory I have is I was, fishing or looking to fish, and I was being a little careless, and I stepped on my Uncle George's handmade flagpole and just broke it in two. I mean, it just snapped it in two. And, that was not a good day for me.
Oh, was he kind of...
He was, he didn't scream at me or anything, but you could tell he was really disappointed to lose that flagpole.
Yeah.
Uh,
But generally speaking, was your Uncle George, like you would say, he was a nice guy?
He was a nice guy, yeah. He was a nice guy. My Aunt Dena was nicer.
Yes, she's obviously the favorite.
Yeah, but we'd go up to Camp Easley and we'd camp with them, so we got to know them pretty well.
And you had cousins, but maybe they were a little bit older than you.
Yeah, no, I had younger cousins.
Okay.
I had younger cousins. Well, when you mean older, you're talking about...
I was thinking Barbara, but I don't know how many kids she had.
Yeah, Barbara is older, and Darlene, Aunt Dena, those are both Aunt Dena's children. They're older than me. But when you were saying cousins, I was really thinking of my second cousins, their children, because they were there at Camp Easley, and we would do stuff together.
Okay. So your second cousins
Yeah,
were
my
up
second
there.
cousins.
So Dina's grandkids?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So Dena was probably my closest aunt that we saw a lot of and did stuff with. Aunt Aggie and Uncle Jack probably
Or Dorothy's siblings? Your
Aunt
mom's?
Aggie is my mom's sister, and they lived in Belfast, Northern Ireland. They actually came over and saw us once, and we went on a trip to see southern Utah and the Grand Canyon. And, so that's a trip I remember going with them.
They didn't have kids? Or they did? Did they have a son?
I don't think they had kids.
Was it Violet that had kids?
Yeah, Violet did.
Okay.
I don't think Jack
Aggie and Jack.
Aggie had kids. I just don't remember them with kids. But so they came over for that trip to America, which was a big trip for them.
Mm-hmm.
And they and I stopped by on my way home from my mission to see them, and they took me and showed me a lot of Ireland. We went to Donegal, which is kind of a beach town.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you went there when you went to
I don't
Ireland.
think we went to County Donegal.
It wasn't county, it was just a little
Town.
city.
I'm sure it was
town.
in County Donegal.
But yeah, those were the two. But they would send us stuff for Christmas.
Mhm.
They would,
Send gifts.
yeah. And I'll talk about that when we talk about Christmas.
But you don't remember much of Violet.
But no, not really. I mean, I think they did come over once, but they didn't really stay with us. I mean, just came for a visit.
Okay. And I think Grandma went to see them.
Yeah, Grandma went to see them. Um, yeah, Grandma went to Ireland when we were kids. I was probably 12. She went back to Ireland and stayed with Aunt Aggie and Uncle Jack, and I think Violet was still there. But at some point they moved to Canada.
Canada, yeah. Yeah. I would love to be able to connect with any of their kids, but
When when Violet passed away, my mother went up there, and Canadian law says your next living relative, if you don't have a will, gets everything. So my mother got the whole estate.
yeah, and there were ill feelings.
Yeah, there were some ill feelings, unfortunately, because they felt like they had been there for Violet, and here my mother gets a whole estate, and
Yeah.
which wasn't huge. I mean, I don't mean to imply it was huge. I think they had a house and they lived pretty simply.
Any other relatives up for question 1 that you wanted to?
I think that kind of covers it.
Okay. All right, we're going to talk about like kind of regular events, birthdays, St. Patrick's, Easter, 4th of July, and Christmas. So start with birthdays. What was that like for you growing up?
You know, Mom and Dad made birthday special, but we didn't have outside birthday parties. You know, we weren't able to invite tons of friends to have a birthday party. They always considered birthdays to be a family event. And just immediate family.
Yeah.
I mean, we wouldn't have aunts and uncles and stuff come over for our birthdays, but they made them special. I mean, we always had a nice breakfast and dinner for our birthdays, and
Cake, ice cream.
we had cake and candles and
Yep. Traditional.
played games, but it was just really the family.
Intimate. Are there any special birthdays you remember where you got like a gift that you've been wanting or anything like that?
Not really. I mean, Aunt Aggie and Uncle Jack would send us birthday cards, and it would have the number of our birthday. So if we were 6 years old, it'd have a big six.
Yeah.
It'd be a really cool card. But that's really all I remember about birthdays.
Okay. St. Patrick's Day.
St. Patrick's Day, of course, my mother was Irish, and she talked about St. Patty's Day a lot, and it was a special thing for her. But here again, we would just have.
Did you have green food? Did you wear green? Did she wear green?
She really didn't do the green food thing, but she made sure that we wore green to school, and if it was Sunday to church, you know, we wore green. And she made sure of that, and talked about St. Patrick and
yeah.
the snakes and all that. But here again, it was just a family event mostly. It wasn't anything that involved outside people.
Yeah, until you got married and your wife started talking in an Irish accent on St. Patrick's Day.
Your mother did more on St. Patrick's Day
than your mother, who was
my
Irish.
mother,
Yeah.
who was Irish, but it was a special day for her. I mean, she talked it up. She made sure we wore green, and
Talk about her heritage a little
we
bit.
had nice meals on that day.
Good. How about Easter?
Easter, I remember we always had an Easter basket, and we would have either a big Easter chocolate bunny, you know, those hollow bunnies, or a big egg, and we would have Easter egg hunts in either the backyard or in the house.
If it was bad weather.
Um,
Did you get new clothes at Easter?
Yeah, we did. We got new clothes at Easter. So I would say Easter was kind of a bigger holiday for us than some others.
All right, 4th of July.
4th of July. My memories of the 4th of July are we would go to Dirk's Field for fireworks.
Is
And
that
sometimes
downtown Salt Lake, or is that in West Valley?
Dirk's Field is in downtown Salt Lake.
Okay.
It was the minor league team that's where the minor league team played.
Is it in the same location as the current Bees or whatever they are right now?
Yes,
Okay.
that's the same location
Okay.
on 13th South.
Yeah.
So we would go there for fireworks, and sometimes they were even playing a baseball game, and we'd go to the game. But that was the big fireworks that we saw. You know, my parents never went out and spent $100 on fireworks. It was mainly the sparklers and the little black snakes, you know.
Yep.
But that's the 4th of July.
Okay.
Sometimes I remember going to a couple of parades in downtown Salt Lake on the
4th of July.
Probably more the 24th of July we'd go to the
For
parade.
Pioneer Day. Yeah.
Pioneer Day.
Okay. Christmas.
Christmas was probably the biggest holiday. You know, my parents went all out. My parents weren't rich, but they probably overextended themselves at Christmas time. And my memories of Christmas are we had a dining room set and a credenza, and they would take chairs from the dining room set, and we'd each have a chair. And on that chair would be a pile of gifts, you know, when you come out Christmas morning. And on the credenza, they would put my dad's socks.
Socks.
Actual
Yeah,
socks. You know,
okay.
we didn't have any homemade stockings.
Yeah,
But
well.
the actual socks, they tape your sock next to your chair
Okay.
on the credenza, and you know, you'd have an orange and you'd have candy in the sock. It didn't hold as much as probably your.
Yeah, well, that's
Christmas.
probably that's a good idea. Maybe we need to shrink our socks.
But they always had these big stack of gifts.
Was it one of those wake up as early as you can and rip it all open, or did you have a system that you had to?
We had a system. I mean, we'd come out early. I mean, we'd wake up our mom and dad, and we'd see the gifts. That was the first thing to come out and see all the gifts. Wow, you know. But then Mom made us eat breakfast before we opened up the gifts, and so after breakfast we could open up our chair gifts, and that was cool. And later in the morning, if we had a bigger gift, like if you were getting a bike or something, then you got your bigger gift. And then...
So you're kind of in suspense in the morning if you were going to get a bigger gift, maybe.
You were what?
Kind of in suspense in the morning if you might get a bigger gift later on.
Right. Let's see.
Her tree always had...
They started out with trees that were real. You know, when I was younger, I remember having real trees. And
Did they cut it down or go to a lot?
They went to a lot.
Okay.
They didn't
You don't remember going to the mountains and cutting down trees?
No, we just went to a lot when we got the tree. But the cool thing I thought about our tree was it had bubble lights, and I used to just love to watch those bubble lights.
And you loved it so much that we got bubble lights growing up. Probably not the same.
Yeah, I tried to find them, but it was harder and harder to find those things. But
and tinsel, show you tinsel.
Yeah, it had lots of tinsel. You know, the ornaments. Yeah, they were nice trees. But later on, they went to a fake tree, you know, like a silver tree.
Yes, very judicious.
But in the day, the schedule of the day, we kind of had a nice, I think we kind of skipped lunch, but we had a nice dinner.
Like Christmas dinner.
Christmas dinner,
turkey.
Maybe 2:30ish.
Yeah, the whole spread.
Yeah, it was huge. It was as big as Thanksgiving. And so we'd be recovering from that. But then we had, in the evening, we would have a time when we opened up gifts that we had, or packages that we had received from Aunt Dena.
Oh yeah, relatives.
And from Ireland, you know, we had, 2 or 3 big packages that we'd wait until the evening to open up. And I remember Aunt Dena would always send us her popcorn balls. You know, she would make these really good popcorn balls. And
so you always saved room for that.
Yeah, and from Ireland we would get, from Aunt Aggie and Uncle Jack, we would get like Cadbury chocolates, and that's you couldn't get Cadbury at that point here in the States, you know. So that was the only time we had Cadbury chocolate, was when they sent it at Christmas. And my favorite Cadbury chocolate was the Cadbury Flake. I don't know if you've ever had that.
I don't know.
But it's kind of a tube kind filled with chocolate, but the chocolate is flakes.
Yeah, I've never.
It just is.
Is that still a thing, even over there? I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's really good.
Did your parents let you go out and show your friends the gifts you got, or?
No, it was more a family day again. Yeah. And the day after, you could show your gifts to friends.
Did Olaf put lights on the house, like outside?
Yeah, he put a few. I mean, he didn't. It wasn't the kind of house that you'd see from space, but he put a few.
It was a National Lampoon's house.
But we would speaking of lights, we'd always go, and it was a tradition to go out and see the lights. You know, my parents would check the newspaper and find where the best houses were to go visit, and so that was kind of a tradition. And then another tradition on Christmas Eve, you know, my mother would always read the night before Christmas.
Any other Christmas Eve traditions that you remember?
No, that was pretty much it. Hearing my mother, that's the last thing we did before we went to bed, you know, her read the night before Christmas. Yeah.
Huh. Did you have your own room, or did you share with Richard?
I shared with Richard.
Yeah, that would be.
Al had her own room.
Yeah, because she's the girl.
Yeah.
And the oldest. What else was I gonna say? I think that's it for Christmas. Let's talk about Veterans Day for a minute, and your father's service. And you were in the Army ROTC, even though you didn't get deployed or sent out or anything, but you did have a couple scares, and your son also served. So
Right. So my dad, he didn't need to serve, but he volunteered. He wanted to serve, and
how old was he?
he was in his 30s. And because he was older than most of the soldiers, they called him Pops.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in the Army Air Force. They were both combined at that time, Army Air Force. And he flew in the B-17 Flying Fortress bomber. And he was a sergeant. He was a radio gunner. And I found a little clip. It's like 4 minutes long.
Okay.
And there's a little bit of language in it, but it really gives you a
sense of what he did.
A sense of what he did during the war. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can get to a place. You could send me this link too, and I could put it on here.
We're just gonna watch like 3 or 4 minutes. That's the B-17 there that he flew in.
And this is World War II we're talking about.
Yep.
So he would be
the radio
in
operator.
the back.
You'll see him. I'll point him out. This guy.
Okay.
This would be him.
Okay. He's working the radio.
Yep.
So that was from the back of the plane, kind of walking forward.
Yep, to the pilot.
Heads up, gentlemen. Here it comes. Check your vessels.
You can see all the flak there.
Hey, Archie, how much longer? 5 minutes IP. Roger that.
So that's him right there.
Fighters in our area.
He was by the radio writing stuff down.
And that might have been the navigator we just saw.
It does today. Hey, Eddie, keep an eye for bogeys on our 6. Yeah, don't worry about it. I got our 6 covered, as long as Al stays away from the ball covering my belly. No sweat. Bet Eddie's belly the last should be easy. Thought the tail was dragging a bit on takeoff. Hey, I'm not taking this shit from a midget and a ginger.
I'm sure this is quite G-rated compared to how it actually was.
Yeah.
The language.
Yeah. But they lost a lot of planes, like you saw. My dad would have been on a gun like that.
Okay, he was a radio operator and
Gunner.
he worked the guns.
Yep, he was a radio gunner. Yeah, like that. He would have been on that gun.
Back to back. Oh, he says Pops. See?
I know.
There you go.
The pilot in this is called Pops.
And where are they bombing in this video?
I don't know.
Come to a heading of 285 and get us the hell out of here. Roger that, turning to 285.
I don't know where they're bombing on this story, but my father bombed over Germany and Italy,
Okay.
and he flew like 55 missions.
Mm-hmm. But he didn't have to fly, yeah.
If you flew 50 missions, they typically sent you home. But a lot of guys didn't make it to 50. I mean, they lost a lot of planes, a lot of bombers. So it's kind of a miracle if you made it to 50, and he did 55.
He had some close calls.
Yeah, he had a couple of times when he was under orders to go on a mission or to go with his crew, and all of a sudden he wasn't on orders, you know, and he was upset about not being able to go a couple of times when he was.
And that plane went down.
And there were a couple of times when the plane went down and no one came back.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of a miracle that even though he was begging to go, that the commander said, no, you're not going.
Oh, this one.
So after he did his 55, he wanted to stay longer, but they wouldn't let him. They said, you've done 55, you know, we're sending you home. But he still wanted to be in the military up until the war's end. He wanted to help. And so when they sent him home, they sent him to Mountain Home, Idaho, and he was in the military there. And I looked up what they did in Mountain Home, and what they did is they trained B-24 bomber crews in Mountain Home, Idaho. And so I think, even though he never said exactly what he did in Mountain Home, I think that's probably what he did was
He was there until the end of the war?
training B-24 bomber crews. Yep.
Okay. What about, yourself and your son on Veterans Day? We talk about.
Well, with me, I joined the Army ROTC mostly to pay for college, and it was just kind of the last 2 years of college that I was part of the Army ROTC. I was on an accelerated program. Most ROTC programs were 4 years. I was on a 2-year program. And so I would go up and do my advanced ROTC camp at Fort Lewis, Washington. That's in between Olympia and Tacoma, Washington.
And this was after you're married and had like 2 kids, right?
Right. So I went through that program and I was commissioned as second lieutenant. And then I was under orders, right after graduating from college, I was under orders to go to Fort Benjamin Harrison, Indiana. That's right near Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And so we had our little bug.
Same one from Aunt Dena.
We had our little bug, and we packed that thing up. The roof, it must have been 3 feet high on the roof, you know.
Well, yeah, with 2 car seats,
Yeah.
I can only imagine taking 2 babies and
yeah, you and Cindy were there in the
I
back
think I was
seat.
just born not
Yeah.
that long before
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, you were pretty young on that trip back to Indianapolis. And so we got there, and the Army put us up. We were going to be there for like 3-4 months. Ended up being 4 months. But the Army put us up in downtown Indianapolis in this hotel called the Murat Hotel. And we were on the 7th floor, and a lot of times that elevator didn't work. I mean, this was a really old hotel. It was
Yeah.
pretty pathetic that they would put us up there. But we're from Salt Lake, hardly even seen a black person. But this is black people. There are no white people.
Mm-hmm.
And we went when we first got there. We said, well, we saw a store right next to the hotel. We'll go pick up a few things. And so we went in that store, and everyone in the store was black. They just stopped what they were doing.
Looked at you.
And they just looked at us. And I thought, this must be what a black man in downtown
Utah.
Salt Lake
Yeah.
feels like, that people just stop and stare.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of a good experience for us to have that.
Be the other side.
Um,
So you were there for 3 months?
4 months.
4 months.
The training was 3 months. I went there to do my officer basic. And when you do your officer basic, they have you, well, at least they had me do kind of everything hands-on. It was kind of infantry training in a way, even though I was there for the Adjutant General Corps. They had us do a lot of infantry training. So you would
Get yelled at and told
Yeah.
to run and push-ups. And
you had to pass a PT test. You would throw live hand grenades. You would fire the M60 machine gun. You would show them that you were proficient in the M16, which is the weapon most infantry carry. You would drive it. I drove a tank. I drove a big deuce-and-a-half truck. They have you hands-on. I set up a claymore mine. They have you, and then they test you at the end. You have to pass a skills test at the end. You have to show that you're proficient with a compass and a map. You can set up that claymore mine. You can, know how to throw that hand grenade safely. They had stations that you had to go. And I remember this was a time when they were trying to get more female officers in the Army. And we were, as males, we were kind of ticked off because on these skills tests, they would allow the female candidates, or the female officers, they would allow them like 10 times to pass that station.
Yeah.
And if we
Mess up once.
messed up once, we're done.
Yeah.
So, but during that 4 months, we also got quite active in the ward there in Indianapolis, and we helped out the ward. I remember this was when wards had to raise money for their ward budgets.
Mm-hmm.
And so we signed up with the ward to do their project, and their project was, their big fundraiser was to be guinea pigs for Eli Lilly and Company. And so we would go in there, and I didn't know if I was part of the group getting the placebo or not.
That's an interesting way to raise money.
Yeah, we raised $500 each. Your mom and I each raised $500 by doing that guinea pig. And I remember the project we were on was, they were testing aspirin, how much bleeding aspirin caused in the GI tract.
That you were getting the placebo.
Yeah. So it was kind of
An
fun.
interesting way to raise money.
And my best friend during this time was a black guy named Albert, and we'd go out to dinner with him. And
Did he have a family?
yeah, he had a wife there.
Okay. That's cool. Was he from there or was he just there for the training?
I think he was from the South, like Georgia, Alabama.
Cool. Any other, for you, military, you did that and
did
you
that.
probably had to do monthly.
I did that, and then I came back to Salt Lake. I was part of 2 units at Fort Douglas, the 244th Personnel Services Company, which is an adjutant general company. We process the awards and when someone is promoted, we process promotions. So it was kind of an HR kind of role, if you will, for the Army. But we'd go up, we'd meet monthly, but we'd go up for a 2-week summer camp up to Fort Lewis, Washington, or Fort Ord, California, places like that for our 2 weeks. So I did that for 6 years. Let's see, I mentioned the 244th. I was also part of the 166 support group. And I was a counterintelligence officer there. But I finished I did it for 6 years. I finished as a captain. I would have done it longer, but it was, work. My real job was becoming very taxing and
Literally. Well, I don't know if you were there yet.
No,
but
I wasn't there yet. I was at Northwest Pipeline, and we were doing rape cases and stuff. So
yeah.
it was. That's kind of.
That's what you signed up for, was 6 years?
I didn't sign. An officer doesn't have a term.
Okay. So you could have left at.
I could have left sooner than 6 years, but.
But it was good. It paid for your college.
Yeah, paid for my college when I was in ROTC, and the money for the, for the weekly or the monthly drills that we did, and the 2-week summer camp was nice as well.
Yep, that would be good perks. So, your son, when did he
He went.
get interested?
Well, I think he was interested in the Army for a long time growing up. So when he, completed his high school stuff, he decided to enlist, and he enlisted in the field artillery.
He wanted to
He liked
shoot the
things.
guns.
He wanted to shoot the guns, and he liked things to go boom.
Yeah, he liked to blow up things. That
Yeah, he
sounds
likes
like
to
a
blow
boy.
up. And so they sent him over to Afghanistan, and
At what year? This was 2002, 2003? When did he graduate?
that's a good question. I'm not really certain of the year. I'd have to.
Well, because 9/11 was 2001.
Yes.
So I would imagine, in the next couple of years, because we were over there for a long time. But.
I'd have to research that to give you a good year. But,
Yeah.
he was.
Early
It was
mid-
after he
2000s.
graduated from high school. He did the training to be in the field artillery.
Did you
and
do
then-
that in Utah?
No, that was. I'm gonna say Georgia.
Okay.
But then they sent him over to Afghanistan, and that was quite an eye opener, I think, for him. The winters were very cold, and they were limited in how much they could shoot back at the enemy, because the enemy would shoot at them and then go hide in these churches or.
Yeah, they had their holes.
So it was a, tough situation where they could lob at you, but sometimes you couldn't lob back,
Mm-hmm.
And he had a couple of, he had one really rough experience that he told me about. They were on a patrol, so they were in the Jeep, and they had like 6 guys in the Jeep, and their Jeep had a roadside bomb, and the Jeep rolled off this incline. They were on a steep road and it rolled off the road down the incline, and I think all but 3 of the guys were killed. Some by the force of the roadside bomb and the shrapnel, and some by the vehicle rolling. And so they were down in this ravine, the guys that survived. And I guess there was only, of those 3 that survived, 1 died in this
Afterwards.
ravine.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was just Joseph and this other guy, and they were pinned in this vehicle at the bottom of this ravine. And they were there for days, like 3 days before they were found.
Wow. Who found them?
And Joseph had taken, I think, glass. He had been
And he had shrapnel.
injured by the glass. And, so he was lucky to have survived that. He still has issues from that.
Did he recover there? Was there a hospital
I think they sent him to Germany
when he was recovering?
yeah.
And then he came home, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's when he came home.
Yeah.
So Joseph served in Afghanistan
Yep.
and got injured there. Naval calls. All right, we're moving on to the funny stories. We need some funny stories. I know I read quite a few in your history. So wherever you want to start, I wrote down a few that you had listed. But.
Well, you wanted me to talk a little bit about Decker Lake growing up, and there were some, for a kid my age, Decker Lake was just.
How far was it from your house? You couldn't walk there, right?
Yeah, I could walk.
Okay, you could walk there.
Yeah, I could walk there. I walked there all the time.
Okay.
It was on, we lived off of 3100 South on Camwell Street, and Decker Lake was on 3100 South, just a little further north and east.
So you walk or ride your bike there?
Yeah. Yeah, I mostly rode the bike. But I had these neighbors next door to the Wagstaffs, and they had traps. And so we'd go over to Decker Lake and we'd set these traps and we'd catch ermine. And ermine are kind of like mink. And so they would use the furs to sell, and
they made money off of it.
Yeah, they did.
It was a real thing, and you just were having fun.
Yeah,
They didn't split the proceeds
no,
with
they
you?
didn't set the. But I thought it was cool to go with them and set up the traps and catch the ermine, and so that's one thing that we did over there. And in the wintertime, we'd clear off snow over at Decker Lake, and we would ice skate and play hockey. We'd just grab sticks, really, and a chunk of ice, and we'd
Just play
pretend
hockey
we were
with it.
hockey players.
Yeah.
Another thing in the wintertime we did was we'd cut holes in the ice. Now, Decker Lake wasn't very deep. It was, a few feet deep. And so we cut holes in the ice, and the carp would swim into the hole, and we'd take our bow and arrow and
Yeah, I read that. I'm like, bow and arrowing.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
during
Is it like shooting fish in a bucket?
they swim through that hole in the ice, and we could just plug them with the arrow. But during the summertime, we also did the bow and arrow thing at Decker Lake. They had this canal that fed into the lake, and there were just tons of carp in that canal, and we'd be up on the bank and we'd be shooting the carp. We'd be shooting the carp.
I was like, how did they get the arrows back? But I guess
Well, you had to go back and get it,
Go
hopefully.
follow the fish and pull it out.
No, if you hit one, it would be flopping with the arrow in it. You'd just go down and get it, but pull the arrow out. That was a lot of fun for us. And so a couple of funny stories that happened over there. During the winter time, I would go over there and ice skate quite a bit. And one time I wanted to just go do some scouting around. So I took the skates off.
And there were new skates.
They were brand new skates. I took the skates off, and I said, what am I going to do? I don't want to haul these things around. So I just left them there on a snowbank, and I wrote a sign, "Do not take."
Which is like an invitation.
Yeah, do not take. I thought,
Where's the ice skate?
surely they'll read the sign and honor the...
Yep.
Yeah, but sure enough, when I got back, the skates were gone. That was kind of the, what? I wrote a sign,
Yeah, and that's what you told your parents, and they weren't that impressed.
Yeah. Another funny kind of story over at Decker Lake was, I call it the biggest mouse in the world story.
Yeah, I read that one.
Because we used to go over there and catch mice. We'd have these milk cartons, and we'd catch mice and put them in the milk cartons, and it was kind of a competition to see who could catch the most mice,
Definitely not
milk
something girls would do for fun.
No,
Hey.
that's something we love to do. So we'd go over there, and one time I was over there with my milk carton and a bunch of the guys, and I saw this huge mouse. It was huge. It was big as a cat. And I picked it up. I was putting it in the milk carton.
Shoving it in.
Yeah. And the thing turned around and bit me. I mean, it drew blood. And so I put it in the milk carton, and the guys around me, I said, hey, look at this, guys. And I showed them how it would bit me, and they said, Potts, you're gonna die. That's a rat, that's not a mouse. You're gonna die. And so 20 minutes goes by, and I look down at the milk carton, and this rat is dead.
See, that's where I would freak out and go, oh no, it died, now I'm gonna die. But you had a totally different response.
I did. I said, hey, look, guys, I'm not going to die. The rat's dead. I killed it.
Yeah, with my
blood killed it.
Yeah.
So it was, I really felt relieved when that rat had died, because I thought that's a sign that my blood is toxic.
You're stronger
not
than
yours.
that rat. Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. What did your mom think of that?
I don't know if my mom ever was told the story.
Oh.
So that's kind of Decker Lake.
Decker Lake memories.
Yeah, and so you wanted me to kind of tell some stories about the Pitts and Potts duo. And
Dave Pitts.
Dave Pitts was red-haired, carrot top.
You met him.
We were about
what
the same
year?
size, and we met probably as juniors in high school.
Okay.
And, you know, we became quite well known, but no one ever knew who was Pitts and who was Potts.
Yeah.
In fact, we were going to change places at graduation, but then we thought the better of it. And we thought our parents probably wouldn't like it if we
Yeah.
switched
That would have gone
places.
down in history, though, you know.
Yeah. But we like to do stuff together, and we got into doing these birthday parties for friends, and we would design these parties.
You're both on the cross country team.
We were both on the cross
So you have
country
a lot of
team.
mutual friends.
Yeah. And so we did a number of these parties, but 3 of them kind of I remember more than others. The first one I'll tell you about is I call it the Storm Mountain Escapade, because we took our good friend Byron Putnam up on Storm Mountain, and it's very steep up there, and we took him up where there's a lot of loose rock, and I pretended to fall and break my leg.
Mm-hmm.
And we were near the top, and so Byron was all concerned, and
You must have been
I was,
very convincing.
I was trying to do my best Oscar performance
Mm-hmm.
without being injured. And so he spent 2 hours trying to get me down off that mountain. And he never did ask why Dave didn't help out, you know?
Dude.
So we finally we're covered in dust, and we're just looking like aliens when we get down. And all of a sudden, all these people start showing up that Byron knows, you know? And he didn't get it, you know? He first said, well, come help, you know, Potts has been hurt. And so they would act like they're helping, but just more and more people, until about 30 people were there, and he's looking around, he still doesn't get it. And so then I start walking on my hurt bike. He got it then. He started chasing me around.
Yeah. I can imagine what that would look like.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So that was one birthday party. Another one I call Lover's Leap, because we designed a party where I can't remember if it was the girl or the boy that had the birthday, but we got them up behind the Capitol, the state capitol, and that was kind of Lover's Leap back then, you know, where people would go to neck. And so we had it staged so the birthday person was up there in the car with us. I think it was a girl that we did this for.
Okay, with their sweetheart.
Yeah, and so then we had people starting to surround the car.
That's awkward.
Yeah. What are you doing up here?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we kind of had a little party after that, but it was kind of fun. And then the last party I remember, we did dozens of these, but the last part I remember was me kind of getting back at Pitts.
Yeah, you gotta tell that one.
So I worked at the Merc, which was a department store, and I had arranged it with my boss that I was going to plant something on him. And what I planted was a little tie tack, and he was going to see him and suspect him of shoplifting. And I had arranged with a police officer in the ward. that
This
he
is
was
very
quite a-
elaborate. This would have required a good amount of planning.
Yeah. So we went into the Merc, and my boss kind of came up and said, "Can I see your pockets?" And Dave said, "Sure." And so he goes in there and fishes out the tie tag. "Oh, what's this? I don't know how that got there."
Mm-hmm. Sure you don't.
And so he took him back to the office, and that's when I called well, no, he called. I had it arranged to, my boss would call the cops.
I mean, wasn't he the whole time like, "Where's Potts? He knows I wouldn't do this."
And so my boss calls the policeman in my ward, and he comes and he picks Dave up and takes him to the police station and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Fingerprints and
Yeah.
the whole 9 yards. And then the policeman said, "Well, I guess we're gonna have to
Take you home, face the
take
music.
you home and talk to your parents." And so that's what he did. And Dave came in the door and he said, "Mom, someone here to see you." And that's when we couldn't hold it any longer. And
Mhm.
Mom came out and said, "Surprise!"
And I bet he punched you.
Yeah.
Probably. See, I had no idea you were such a party planner. I should have gotten you to plan all my kids' birthdays.
Yeah.
That's fun. Okay.
So, that's all my funny stories.
Funny stories. Okay, let's get to more serious topic. What are some of, I like to call them testimony anchors, because I feel like they're things that, you come back to throughout your life, that things that have helped you know that the church is true and that Jesus is the Christ, and things that have helped you get through hard things. So.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the church, and I'm sure like many that grew up in the church, I took it for granted. I went to seminary, I went to Sunday school, but it wasn't until I was 18 that I really started to say, "Well, wait a minute, I'm going to have to, if I'm thinking about a mission, I'm going to have to bear testimony and tell people that I know the Book of Mormon is true, and can I really do that?" And so I decided, well, I don't think I can at this point. I don't think I can do that. And so I decided to really read the Book of Mormon like Moroni asked us to read it, with real intent, and really think and pray about it. And so I still wasn't, I felt good about it, but I didn't feel I could say I knew it was true. But I after going through the process of reading it, thinking about it, I decided I would go up in the canyons and really pray about it. And so I went up there, up Big Cottonwood Canyon where the S curve is, and I went for a little hike and just found a spot and decided to start praying. So I was up there for hours and hours and hours, and I was kind of exhausted praying for that long, but I wanted to know. And I don't share this experience very often, but it was you know, I felt in me a voice, and I don't know if you were standing next to me, if you would have heard it, maybe not, but I felt a voice say the words, "Your sins are forgiven you." And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting, because I wasn't really praying for that.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I felt just a flood. I'll describe it as a flood of knowledge. I knew that the Book of Mormon was true. I knew that Joseph Smith was a prophet. I knew that the church had been restored through Joseph Smith. I knew the Bible was true. You know, just this flood of knowledge, and not just of knowledge, but of joy. I felt joy so intense. I'd never felt joy like that before. So, you know, after that experience, I could say that I knew. I could look people in the eye on my mission and say, I know that God lives, that you are his child, that the Book of Mormon is true. I could say that. I could look people in the eye and honestly say that.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
What else do you feel like was an anchor for you?
Well, you know, after that experience, I've of course had other spiritual experiences, none that were as intense as that one. But you know, during my mission, I had a lot of really cool experiences with investigators and bearing my testimony. I've never really seen an angel or anything like that, but I have witnessed miracles. I've seen people be healed. I've been a recipient of a blessing where I was healed, and when I was, I guess I was like 14. You know, I've seen Trisha be healed through a priesthood blessing. You know, Trisha was hit by a car, and
You mean Tiffany?
Tiffany, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's okay.
Tiffany was hit by a car. How old was Tiffany?
Wasn't she like 6? She was pretty little. Maybe she was. Oh, was she that? Oh, maybe she was a little older.
Yeah. And I got a call that she had been hit. She was being live flighted up to the hospital right by my work, Primary Children's.
Ran into the car, that's just so you know. She's on a bike, she ran into that.
Okay, all right. And so when I went over from work to the hospital, they told me that she had a subdermal hematoma, you know, swelling on the brain, a big pocket of blood causing pressure on the brain, and so she was given a blessing, and they were going to take her into surgery to relieve the pressure, and they decided to just do one more x-ray, and they came back and said, well, there's no reason to take her into surgery. There's no, it's gone. We can't explain that because the moment ago it was
there.
Yeah. And then kind of another special experience I had was on a marathon training. I was trying to get under, I'd run marathons before, but I was trying to reach a goal. I was trying to get under 3 hours, which for marathoners is kind of
Pretty fast.
it's kind of a goal that's some set, and so I trained, I set a training schedule. I trained for weeks and months to reach that, and came to the day of the race, and I was feeling good. I was feeling like I was going to achieve the goal, and I got to just past Vail, the St. George Marathon course.
Yeah,
That's
really
what,
tough.
Mile 11, 10, 11?
Yeah, I don't know.
I got around there, and my left leg just, it was failing me. I couldn't.
Did it just freeze up?
Yeah, it was just, it was painful. It was so painful, I couldn't hardly move it. And so I was just kind of running with the right and just kind of hobbling with the left. And I thought, all this training.
Yeah.
Gone. But I decided to say a prayer, and I pleaded with Heavenly Father. I said, you know how much I've worked for this, and can you help me? Can you help me help my leg so it can recover? And I had the feeling that a peaceful feeling, and I kind of sensed that, just keep going, keep running, just take it a step at a time. And so for the next 2 miles, I struggled.
Just limping along.
I was limping along, but after that 2 mile period, my leg, I don't know what happened. All of a sudden it worked again. And so I started picking it up and running, and I actually got under my goal, my 2 hours and 51 minutes, 52 minutes, or no, it's 2:53, I think. But I was just elated to be able to reach that goal, and it wasn't anything I did. It was Heavenly Father that healed my leg.
Mm-hmm. That's neat. Anything else on that one?
Well, you asked about tough times.
Yeah, that's the next one. So yeah, things that have been tough in your life, what's helped you get through those times?
I think the tough experiences that we've had, your mother has had a number of health challenges.
Mental and physical.
Mental and physical, bipolar illness, and she's had other times when she hasn't been able to function. There have been a few periods, like 3 or 4 month periods, where she's just in bed, and I'm trying to keep things together. But we're getting support from our families, you know, particularly my family.
Mm-hmm.
So those were hard times, and I think you and Cindy may have gone shopping with me during those periods. And, you know, other hard times have been when our kids and grandkids have made choices that have been tough. And I've in my own life I made mistakes and had times when I wondered if I'd get through it, and I think what has got me through it is, like you say, the falling back on the anchors, you know, the times that the Lord has really been there. You've had special experiences that you look back on, and just trusting the Lord that He'll be there for you, just taking one day at a time. You know, just trusting that you'll get through it. You know, I think everyone has times when they have rough times, challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Well, we're gonna end with your words of wisdom for your posterity. Since you've lived all these years, you have all this knowledge and wisdom that you're going to impart to us in not a lot of time. You're going to condense it. Whatever you have there, you're going to give us.
Well, I don't know that I have any great words of wisdom, but I think we are here to learn. We're here to learn to trust the Lord, and the experiences that we have help us to do that, even though some of them are tough and you wonder if you're going to get through them. You know, if you just hang on and take it a day at a time and trust the Lord, and keep up the good habits that you have, you know, hopefully you're praying and reading scriptures and attending church and trying to keep the commandments, and, you know, doing the basics. And I think commitment is important. I think commitment in marriage is important, and it's important in your relationship with your Heavenly Father to commit. And, you know, we're going to fall and we're going to fail, but it's important to have those commitments and view them as important, and get back on track. I think it's also important to evaluate where you are, to look at yourself, look at where you are, and make adjustments, repent, get back on track.
Regular checkups.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anything else?
I just thank you for being interested in kind of capturing this. And
Yep, he has a lot more in his history, which he put together, which is great. He has lots of appendices and other stories and things. I just was focusing on the things I thought would be most beneficial through video, but there's a lot of good things in there too. So thanks for taking the time to put
thank
that
you
together.
for taking the time to come all the way to St. George.
Yeah, so far. But yeah, and maybe we'll do another one of these videos when you're 80, so you can, between now and then, you'll have even more things to share with us, right?
Maybe.
All right, thanks, Dad.
Thank you.